Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Lisa Sulsenti, and welcome to my podcast. So, today I want to talk about testosterone. And we don't want to leave the men out, but I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day because I know when we talk about menopause and perimenopause and the different seasons, and you're talking about estrogen and progesterone, you just think about females, right? A lot of men will say, well, how does this pertain to me? It actually does. And this is the crazy part is that we're going to call you guys that you're in, this for all the men out there. We're not going to say you're in perimenopause or menopause, but so I do hormone testing, and I can tell you many, many times when I test men, they might have an estrogen issue or they might have a testosterone issue. So it really isn't just divisive or testosterone's men and estrogen's women. Now, obviously, the female cycle is for women, but in hormones in general, the podcast I do and the conversation we're having isn't just really men versus women. It's not just a woman's podcast here about hormones. So I wanted to address that because it come back to me a few times and I'm like, wow, it made me realize how really the men don't really understand their bodies. I don't think men are in tuned with the bodies as well as the women are. When I have the male patient in front of me and I test them and their estrogen's high, that's an issue. It's a problem. And if the testosterone's high, it's really a problem. And if the testosterone's low, it's an issue. So obviously, you know, I've tested women where the testosterone's high and the estrogen's low, and I've had men where the estrogen's high and the testosterone's low. And what you do see a lot of times in the individuals, the patient sitting in front of me where the hormones are flopped, the man seems to be more of the sensitive guy. He might be more of like the girl acts more of like, you know, I don't want to say he's the woman in the relationship, but he's more sensitive and caring, and the girl might be a little bit indifferent, a little colder, a little like, oh my gosh, here he goes again. The man that's a crier could have more estrogen in him, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's at a safe level. But sometimes, believe it or not, men, the hormones, when I talk about estrogen, it's about you guys too, and women, when I talk about testosterone, it's about you too. So just don't brush it off. It's what makes us what we are. And we go through different seasons of our life and we go through different events during our life that can change these things. So that's what I want to talk about today. We're talking about testosterone. It's a male hormone. So I know the men are going to be like, oh, this finally a podcast for me. Not really. It's really all of these podcasts have been for both men and women. And also children, because when the hormones kick in, these could be not working well for some people. And again, a lot of people just think girls, PCOS, infertility, not getting their periods, acne, but it's actually a thing for boys as well. So please keep an open mind when you're listening to this. Maybe you don't understand your body well enough, but that's okay because that's what I'm here for. So today I want to talk about what happens in the patient with high testosterone or low testosterone, and again, male or female, and it looks a little different in both of them. I just touched upon that a little bit right there, but if I can address the men in the testosterone, it's the main hormone in men, which is why we always think about that. And honestly, when it's high in a male, it doesn't typically, it's not common. It's not common to be high in a male. And just I don't want to even get into this, but I just want you to know in my field, I need to know what you are at birth. I need to know if you're a man or a woman. So don't play the game with me about, you know, what you identify with, because you'll just waste your money and you'll just confuse yourself, and it just isn't going to work well for you. If I've had this where people fill out the form incorrectly and it comes back with, let's say they're born, I had a patient that was born female and he told me he was a male, which was fine. But when it came back with male numbers because that's what he is identifying with. That's what he wrote down. I knew him as a male, didn't know he was female. But then he had to correct me after it came back. And I was like, this is an issue, right? So please know it's what you're born as, and that's what you need to tell the doctor about. So this is men. Born men, the testosterone isn't typically high. It's not common. So if the patient in front of me is a male and his testosterone's high, I'm going to first ask him if he's taking supplements or testosterone injections or pellets? Is there any kind of, hormone replacement going on here? Because that would be a reason why the testosterone would be high. It's the same thing too. It could be a reason why your estrogen's high if you're taking like birth control pill or, hormone replacement therapy. Now, you might be wondering, well, is that a bad thing, Dr. Lisa? Okay. Anytime a hormone's high, I first have to see if I can find out why, because you want to get to the root of it. And what I don't do is I don't treat that. I'm not like, all right, his testosterone's high, I got to get it lower. That, in theory, you can put on the back burner. It's not like you don't want it to get lower, but what you want to do is say to yourself, why? What is creating this high testosterone in this patient in front of me? So the first thing I'm going to ask the patient, if they haven't told me already, because believe it or not, this is a very common scenario. They don't even tell me what correct sex they are, right? And then sometimes they don't tell me that they're taking hormone replacements. They can go through a whole entire history with me, fill out a form, and they don't put it down. Maybe they don't think it's significant, which is fine. But if you're sitting in your car listening to me going, why are you asking him? I was like, because he didn't tell me. So I will say, hey, are you taking hormone replacement? Are you taking testosterone injections? Are you taking some kind of supplement that boosts it? Do you have pellets? And I can say 9 out of the 10 times, usually that they're taking something. So if that's the case, this is what I need you to hear, and I need you to take this from the podcast. And this is going to apply to hormones across the board, but I'm going to use it in this scenario. You want to make sure that your body's processing that extra I'm going to estrogen, sorry. You want to make sure the body is processing that excess testosterone that you have in the body, because that is not a safe thing for it to be floating around the body. So if you are taking any kind of testosterone boosting, supplement, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and that's the thing about hormone replacement therapy. It's the thing about birth control. This isn't an argument against it. This is just to tell you how to keep your body safe. So if you have high testosterone because of pellets or injections or supplements or some kind of we'll just call it testosterone enhancing substance, you want to make sure that your liver and your gut are processing that correctly. So it's a huge thing about hormones and the pathways that they take. They can take many different pathways. So it's not like you just go down one little route, right? It's like getting to the fork in the road and you have 8 choices or 4 choices for it to go. And we don't want hormones to ever go down an unsafe pathway. This leads to different types of cancers and so forth. So that is really, really important. When you have too much testosterone, you might not be in a safe setting. So you want to consider that. And high testosterone, which we're talking about, some conditions that are associated with it, can be alopecia, which not having hair, infertility. Believe it or not, there's been studies, it's not completely conclusive, but they have, linked too much testosterone possibly with breast cancer in both male and female. It also can be sleep apnea with excess testosterone, prostate enlargement, and prostate cancer. The studies are conflicting, but it's there. They're doing more research. Again, because what's happening is it's not being assimilated correctly. It's if you have too much and you're not excreting it, it can create some of these things. And estrogen is the same thing. This is the same story for estrogen too, but possibly maybe not the exact conditions that I'm talking about. It could affect your liver. It can affect the cardiovascular and hypertension. In females with too much testosterone, it can be polycystic ovary syndrome, which throws off your estrogen, by the way. And so that's kind of where you are with that. So these are symptoms of high testosterone. Could be acne, fertility issues, anxiety, aggression, like maybe a short fuse, and also excess hair, usually around the chin. And that could be maybe more known in females too, if you see that when you start getting the chin hair and stuff like that, and especially if you're a younger age and maybe that's not ready to be in that scenario. Like, for example, menopause, you start getting a little bit of the chin hair. So because your testosterone is getting thrown off. So I think what I want you to take from this is that you have to look at the patient and say, why is this high? And knowing that it's high, you want to make sure that it's taking the safe pathways. How do you find out? There is a urine test that does it through my companies. And it does look at the metabolites. So that means when you urinate, it gives off these end products of these pathways. Like I said, if you're at a fork in the road and your hormones have about 8 different pathways or 9 different pathways it can go down. And if you're in functional medicine, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's just so many different ways it could go. And you're going to start off with the primary sex hormone of DHEA, and that can go many places. Testosterone can do its thing, progesterone can do its thing, estrogen can do its thing, and they can go in many different directions. And actually, progesterone can get drawn into your adrenals. So lots of things can happen, different pathways it can go down. So the number one thing you want to know, if one of your hormones is high, hey, am I at least processing this correctly and not causing down the road a health problem? So that's the first thing. The second thing is say, all right, what are some things that would be causing high testosterone? So I talked about some of the conditions that a high testosterone is associated with, but some causes can be smoking. Actually, high smokers can have high testosterone. The main one is usually this synthetic form of taking some kind of testosterone enhancing supplement. It also can be some drugs that you're on, barbiturates, estrogens, taking different type of hormones will throw. Oral contraceptives, again, can throw off your testosterone. So there's different types of vessel dilator hormones, different things that you anti-convulsant medicines, things like that. Different hormone type of medicines can throw out other hormones. The other thing is interesting, there's a connection between high testosterone and low insulin, and also high insulin with low testosterone. So they're kind of like a seesaw. They go together. So one thing we want to do with high testosterone is we want to look at their blood glucose and see if they have low blood sugar. And we could always ask why with that. So testosterone could be possibly, if you're not taking supplements and it's high, you could possibly think, all right, is there an underlying condition that the person has? Is there some other medical condition that's going on that's driving this testosterone up? So you definitely want to look at tumors and problems with pituitary, but you also, with women primarily, you also want to look at PCOS. And you want to also maybe possibly look at thyroid. They all kind of work together. Ovaries not working, ovarian failure, and thyroid and high blood sugar, low blood sugar, they all kind of go together. So this is something that I tend to start looking. This is functional. So think about a buoy in the water and it's going off. And that would be the high testosterone. And then what we do is we put on our scuba gear, we hold hands and we go down and we dive deep and we look under, like what's causing this high testosterone. So that's something you want to do. We also want to go to the gut. The leaky gut is really, really important with any kind of hormone imbalance. I think I've talked about this in all of these podcasts, but I want to make sure that I really drive it home, is that the gut is the garbage center of the body. The liver, it's going to change a toxin into a safe form. That's what the whole word detox, and I'm going to have a really big podcast on this coming up, but the word detox means it takes something in a toxic form, not necessarily has to be harmful, but it would be harmful for you to pee or poop out in the form it's in. So let's talk about high testosterone. The liver's job would be to convert this into a safe form if you had too much of it. If you have too much estrogen, the liver's job is to take this toxic thing and change it into a water-soluble thing that you could pee or poop out. That's what detox means. It means to deregulate or to change, I don't know, like detox, to take the toxin out of it. And it's called converting it or conjugating it and changing it. And then it gets sent to the liver. I mean, then from the liver, it's going to get sent to the gut or to like the kidneys, right? So the gut gets it. And then the gut has this ability to get rid of it. And we can test that in a stool test. We can see through certain markers if your gut is getting rid of toxins or things from the liver, things that are going to be garbage, right? Things that need to be eliminated, if it's doing that correctly. If your gut's not working properly, sometimes it does the opposite and absorbs it right back in. So now you're really not getting rid of what you should. So a lot of the times we become toxic because the gut doesn't poop things out. It doesn't convert it and get rid of it. It reabsorbs it back into the body. Don't think of it as you're backed up and it's sitting there. It could literally go back into the circulatory system and the hepatic system. So you don't really want hormones floating around in the body at a high level, and your body having a body that's unable to get rid of it. Girls, that's what that breast cancer is. The estrogen is just so high in your body, it just keeps getting circulated back into the system. Not all breast cancers, but a breast cancer that's high in estrogen. Sorry, I should have said that. But when you get tested and it's estrogen based, it's the estrogen going back into the body and going to the receptors. So that's sometimes the belly fat and different things that go on with women. Again, hormone imbalances are very complicated, but trying to get to the root cause is what functional medicine does. So let's look at low testosterone. So you want to look at the blood sugar, you want to look at like other functions of the body, and this kind of goes for low, high, this is the general theory, common talk of us. Oh, one other thing you want to look at with hormones that are too high or too low is going to be, is there a pest or a pathogen in the gut that's causing this? Are there parasites? Are there bacteria? Are there biofilms? Are there viruses? Is there yeast candida overgrowth? Do we have food sensitivities? And you also want to look at the body. Do they have mold? Do they have heavy metals? Is there some kind of toxic in their environment that's doing it? I have patients with mold problems, and that really throws the entire body off. It's high testosterone as well. But let's look at low. Low is just more common, unfortunately. So high testosterone is possible in females. Maybe I should go that way. I was going to go male-female, but maybe we'll come back to that. But high testosterone can happen in females as well. Men, low testosterone is very, very common, probably the most common thing, especially as men age. Just like women, as we get into our 50s, our estrogen plummets and the men's testosterone plummets. So in that case, what happens is let's see, some symptoms would be, your low sex drive. It reduces your bone strength, which is kind of the same as low estrogen. Poor concentration, depression. Actually, you can have breast discomfort in males. They can have fatigue, lack of motivation, low muscle mass. You start losing the protein in your body, and the skin gets saggy, and the body gets more saggy. So same symptoms as low estrogen. Memory issues, disturbance of sleep patterns, reduced physical performance, and you sometimes get a lower ability to exercise. And you can also have decreased body hair and weight gain around the belly as well, just like women. So the low testosterone in men is very similar to the low estrogen in women, especially past that, age of 50. If you're having low testosterone in those fertile years when you should really have your hormones going, that's really key for all of this, but definitely, your fertility. So that's something you want to definitely get into figuring out why. Remember, just getting synthetic testosterone, not necessarily, a thing that I'm saying is bad, but it would be bad if you're taking testosterone, especially at a young age, and not looking at why, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Some conditions associated with low testosterone is diabetes, but definitely high insulin. And it could also be the bone and the muscle mass. So, you have to worry about that. Alzheimer's could be there. Anemias, osteoporosis and fracture, which would have to do with the low muscle and bone mass. Infertility, we talked about, erectile dysfunction, and alopecia is another thing that could happen. So those are some of the things that are associated with it. Causes. All right. The liver is really important with processing hormones. So if we have a problem with the liver, we'd have to look there. And a lot of times what happens sometimes as you get older is that, and again, this applies for younger too, because God forbid some of these things happen when you're young, but you want to look at the liver. And if you did a lot of drinking, or you're still drinking, or you're 50 and you're celebrating and you're drinking a little bit more, you really want to look at fatty livers and things like that to make sure that the liver can help process these things. So this is really interesting. Heavy alcohol use, but you could even be something that's going on with fatty livers and cirrhosis of the liver and stuff like that. We actually want to look at the kidneys as well and make sure that they are dealing with protein and things like that well, and we want to get over to the thyroid, because the thyroid, it can affect estrogen, it can affect testosterone. So low testosterone could be hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, stuff like that. So those are some of the underlying things. And women, menopause is definitely going to be something it just happens. And so it could be a cause, right? Getting older. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Like, what do? I just can't turn off the switch of aging. We will talk about that. You also have to look at if the person's doing hormone replacement therapy, right? If you get in too much testosterone, it can throw off estrogen and progesterone. If you're taking estrogen, you can throw off testosterone and progesterone. So you kind of, these work well together. So you have to look at that. You have to look at some of the medications you're on and things like that. So it's multifactorial, but definitely you want to look at the liver working well, the kidney working well, and again, get back to that gut. Is it processing it correctly? Is it just dumping it out? You don't want that too. So the leaky gut is really, really huge with this story. For women, let me go back and before I jump into the women thing. And then get mental, she just wants to talk about the women. High insulin levels are really, in the studies out there, pretty much linked a lot with low testosterone. Again, kind of like a seesaw. So high insulin, low testosterone, low insulin, high testosterone. So a lot of times what I see in men is what's called a metabolic disorder. And I have really helped people reverse this, but I have to say it's not, I would say, this is really crazy because I see men really struggle with this. I want to say it's really not easy for them, but they can do it. I've seen men do it and it's just amazing. But I find it harder for men, although men lose weight quicker than women and they get this stuff under control way quicker than women. Their bodies just balance back amazingly. It's like, it literally, I'm jealous of it. If you guys would just do it, and do what I tell you, you guys can bounce back so fast. When I have a woman in front of me and a man in front of me, and they both have a bit of a metabolic disorder, and I go through my leaky gut program with them, the men just bounce out really great. They just do amazing. They lose weight, their insulin starts getting normal, their glucose starts getting normal, their thyroid works out, everything just starts getting beautiful when we do my kind gut program. And the women, they do well, but they have to work so much harder at it and the body's so much slower at it. And a lot of times it's really, I got to get deeper into the hormones if they let me. I get some resistance at that point sometimes. But the men just kind of the bodies respond. The men just don't want to eat well. Do you know what I mean? The women will do it. That's my point. The women will eat well. They'll listen. They'll do everything. And I bet if you're listening to me and your husband's done some kind of diet with you, they just do well, but they don't stick with it. And so that's what I want to hit home. Second point to you guys, if you guys just would take on the basics, your body responds well. I mean, it's just, I get it. It's not easy. I've had men cry in my office and literally I wish I can do this. The pre-diabetic thing, if you're pre-diabetic, it's reversible. If you're diabetic type 2, it's reversible. So and most of it is caused, I've been doing this for 30 years. I started off with heart disease and diabetes. And then I moved into a leaky gut. And now leaky gut has led me into a lot of hormone stuff and even my own life. But my point to you is that I've reversed so many diabetic and pre-diabetic states, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, and a lot of it has to do with diet and lifestyle. So yeah, we're going to get your gut to work better and process things better. We're going to get the liver to work better and the pancreas to work better. But it's also, it won't work if I don't get the patient to change their diet and eat healthy. You can come in and you can learn that with me, but you also can do something like Whole30. You could do something like paleo diet and Mediterranean diet. Those 3 diets are actually phenomenal. And you just have to really, vegetables, fruits, your lean meats, your fish, and it should be cold water clean fish, not the junk. And you should be doing nuts and seeds and spices and really plants, as many plants as you possibly can. And so it's a plant-based diet, right? So Mediterranean you can kind of do, and you can do paleo. They're really my 2 favorite. I think Whole30 is really restrictive, but you could actually start with that because it's pulling out the gluten and the wheat and the grains. And you could really start there, and men really do well. I know I have a lot of men right now trying to do all these fastings, and that's great because it does help them get their blood sugar steady. But you guys need to look at what you're eating. This is a really big link with testosterone problems and low testosterone. And to low testosterone is actually linked with vitamin D deficiencies, a lot of nutrient deficiencies. The prostate is actually linked identically with selenium deficiencies. I had a guy where we had selenium, copper, and chromium. So his vitamins were great, but his minerals were all depleted. So, and he has a large prostate cancer. They think that he has cancer. They're going through this whole thing right now. And he has absolutely no selenium. So selenium is super important for the males, for both women and men, because selenium is thyroid and selenium is also ovaries and breasts. So like you have to get your minerals tested. You've got to get all your vitamins tested. Unfortunately, when you go to the medical doctors, they don't do all of them. They just do a few. They don't do enough. They don't go deep. They just do the top. They do the surface. Everything's surface with medical. Everything's surface. So you want to go deeper, and you want to make sure you don't have any of these vitamin deficiencies. You want to make sure you don't have any mineral deficiencies. And the amino acids are actually really important too. But if I can pause for a second and say, well, maybe you're saying to me as you're driving your car, listening to this going, hey, I do eat really healthy. I don't know what she's talking about. Well, if you eat really healthy and you have a leaky gut, you're not absorbing your nutrients then. And even if you're popping supplements and your gut wall doesn't absorb them, then you're not getting your nutrients. So that's what you just have to keep asking why. Like, why don't I have enough vitamin D, or why don't I have enough selenium, or why don't I have enough chromium or copper? Where's my zinc? What's my zinc levels? So it's really, really important. So that's the kind of the idea I'm going through with here. So for women, I know I was going to talk about women, but I wanted to just get really quickly finish my thought, which was, okay, so with the men, when I have a male in front of me that's kind of heavy and he's diabetic or pre-diabetic and he has no testosterone and he's got high blood sugar and it's just this metabolic mess, and they're like, I can't get rid of the belly, I have no sex drive, I'm depressed, I'm not happy. First of all, when I get a depressed male in front of me, the first thing I want to be like, I bet you have no testosterone. And then I want to look at their vitamins. So it's going to be leaky gut. It's going to be liver. It's going to be a really healthy diet to get that blood sugar under control. And it's also going to be exercise. So that's another thing. And I don't care if you just walk or get a bike or do something. I always say find your groove. Find that moving groove thing that you like to do. It could be Tai Chi. It could be yoga. You got to move. You've got to, because what you're doing with low testosterone, and ladies, I talked about this in perimenopause and menopause with low estrogen, you've got to keep that muscle mass on your body. Stop worrying so much about the fat and really pay attention to the muscle mass. And you don't have to, I'm not talking about having no neck and being in the gym and being cut. I'm talking about osteoporosis and osteopenia. It is for every one of us with low blood sugar, low estrogen and low testosterone. So what you want to do is, like, all these women go, oh, I'm supposed to go to hormone replacement therapy. No, the way that you make more bone cells, the way you lay down more bone cells, the way you stimulate bone cells is by putting a load on the bones. So it has to be a light load and a safe load, not a heavy load. You don't want to blow your discs out at age 55 years old, blow your back out. You want to do a light load. So you want to be able to exercise, like put some pressure on the bones and the muscles, and you want to keep that muscle mass. It's super important. And as you're working out, you're bringing oxygen into the body, you're pushing things through the body, you're forcing that liver to flush itself, you're forcing the pancreas and the stomach to work. So stop getting lazy. This is a lazy thing, and I'm in it too. Don't get me wrong. I've gotten away from the gym, away from working out, because you get injured, you get surgeries. There's just things that happen. I get it. Life happens. But this is what I'm talking about, how to bring up the testosterone. I would even talk about leaky gut and diet and exercising, and working on the liver with high testosterone too, because why is the body not getting rid of this excess testosterone? So super, super important. The other thing we have to look at with testosterone, we have to look at cortisol. Cortisol is your adrenaline, right? It's your stress hormone. So it's made by the adrenals that, again, I said before, look at the kidneys, make sure this is working properly. So you want to make sure high cortisol in the body will bring up insulin, will bring up blood sugar, will actually lower testosterone. And same thing with estrogen, ladies. A lot of times high cortisol will actually drive estrogen up. So that's, again, something that's going to create the insulin to go up. up and the fat, a little bit opposite of the testosterone story, but what we see with a woman sitting in front of us that can't lose weight, that's heavy, that's depressed, and is frustrated. It's a different story. Maybe they have high estrogen. It could be low estrogen. It really just depends. But if they're doing hormone replacement therapy and they're sitting in front of me miserable, I want that saliva and that urine test because I want to see if she's taking synthetic hormone and it's not being processed properly and it's just making her more miserable. So that's really important. And I've seen that. But what you want to also do is look at cortisol. Cortisol is that stress hormone. So if your body's stressed, and again, life happens. And as we get older, we become watching a lot of people pass away. A lot of people get sick. We become caregivers. We have our children becoming adults. We're in these sandwich years and it gets tough. And then as we get older, we become the elders. And it's just tough to watch your body like hurt. So I get it. I really do. So, you've got to find a place for stress. You've got to find a place for exercise and peace, some kind of peace. And I was talking about this with a friend the other day. Your body has a soul and spirit inside it. And that is peaceful. The soul is not negative. It's positive. It's love. It's happiness. It's peace. So that's your spirit right there. You have to connect maybe more to your spirit and your soul and try to get a little bit away from the flesh, the human mind, the human body. That's more negative. Our mind tends to go towards negative. The world is negative. The body hurts. The body has pain, and it could really drive the mind into a negative place. But if you can tap more into your spirit, I'm telling you that was really life-changing because sometimes what's driving the body is stress. This cortisol is the train, it's the conductor. So you have to look like what's the person's total cortisol, what's their level, and is that driving the high glucose? Is that driving the inability to lose weight? Is that driving the diabetes? Is that lowering the testosterone? Is that making the estrogen nuts? So where's this person? Do they have low cholesterol? Cortisol. If the cortisol's tanked, it's just as bad because now you're like in an utter fatigue. You have no energy. Is that driving? So you're looking at is it causing the hypertension? Where is this person what's their perception? What do they look like with the cortisol? In the cortisol world, we typically do a test just like, it's a little different. So I wanted to get over a little bit of the testing. There is what time are we on with this? I don't even know what time we are on with the podcast. I'm sorry. I always try to keep it at a certain time. But I did have but I did have several people say to me, just keep going. You're always worried about cutting it short. And the reason I don't want to cut it short on you, but I try to keep these in sustainable snippets so you remember information. I believe that past a certain time, you just don't remember. If you watch a long podcast, you're trying to tell somebody what you listen to and you can't. You're just I don't remember what she said, but she said something about that. So I'm trying to keep these in bite information so your brain can contain the information. But what I wanted to say was, I'm going to forget what I was going to say because I went down that little tidbit. When we do the testing, okay, yeah, that's totally probably menopause thought right there where I had to pause for a second. When we do the testing, there's 3 types of testing. So blood test is the least effective, and that's the one that typically the medical world does. So I want you to understand, you can use it as a screening once you really know the patient and kind of know the levels, but it's my least favorite. And I agree in functional, we've talked enough with functional medicine doctors. It's our least favorite. It's really just testing what's floating around in the blood. And anytime you get a blood test just the average blood test when we go, it's a snapshot in time, even thyroid. It's just a snapshot of 24 to 48 hours of that draw. So unless you're taking it from the cells or the tissue, it's not as effective. Some of them, they do test the red blood cells. And our vitamin testing, we test both inside the cell and outside the cell. So our test looks back 4 weeks to a month of time, and I can see how deficient somebody was. Have they been deficient for about a month versus 2 days? So ours is a little more, I would say a lot more quantitative, a lot more informative. So the blood test on hormones is not my favorite. The second one is the saliva test, and that's where you're going to spit, and you have to take it right when you wake up, a couple hours after, in the afternoon, and then in the evening. So you're getting four snapshots. You're getting 4 takes on the day of what it's doing, and then you're kind of they draw like a map of what it did for the day. And it's supposed to, like, when you get up, your cortisol should be the highest. Actually, it'll get a little higher, and then it'll start coming down. And so that's what it should look like. Go up. By the second one, it's high, and then it's going to come down nicely during the day. And then a lot of people are stressed, believe it or not, in the afternoon. So we chart it, right? And we'll be able to look at the cortisol and see if it's all over the place. If it's flatline, it's bad. And so we can kind of see what this person's adrenals are doing, and we can get an idea looking at the whole picture, the holistic picture of the person, how it's affecting the body. We do this with the estrogen, and as well, we look at how the estrogen behaves. So that's saliva, and saliva gives us a lot of information about the tissues, what the body's really doing. The best one is urine, because you're looking at the end products of all those crazy pathways that I was talking about. So it's going to give you the levels of the hormones. I believe, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure I just got an email the other day that they threw the cortisol now into the urine test. And so our test is humongous, and it's called metabolites. So they're looking at all the different, and what that basically means is when the body's converting estrogen, let's say estrogen to, I don't know, something else. Let's say this thing called C, and it has to go from A to B to C. There's a lot of little things in between. There's going to be A1 in between, A2 in between, B1 in between, B3. And I don't mean vitamins. I just mean these metabolites. It's going to convert it. So estrogen is going to convert it to one thing, then another thing, then another thing, then another thing. And finally, it's its end product that you pee out. So we can look at all these weird things that it should be. And that's how they look at the pathways. They look at all these little metabolites along the way, kind of like little train stops. And they're just looking at all the stops, like what is estrogen doing, which pathway did it go down, if that makes sense. And so that's the best way. And so my suggestion to you guys or girls out there, if you're doing hormone replacement therapy, I would strongly suggest that you know the pathways that your hormones are going down, what your body does or does not do with them. And that's to prevent anything bad down the road. You might be feeling great now. And again, if you're trying to build body mass and you're trying to keep, you're trying to keep your bones healthy, I understand the why, but it might not happen for you. I've had several patients recently, women on hormone replacement therapy, get lumps in their breasts. Now they were benign, but what is that telling you? The estrogen's going to the breast. So what they did was they got off the hormone replacement therapy. So, and then we just do a different pathway. I said, or you just don't take estrogen. Maybe you need progesterone. Did they test you? And always, I'm sorry, they don't test them. They just run the blood. They say you're fine, and then they put them on it. So just beware of that. I've done enough functional medicine courses in my learning, and hormone replacement doctors have taught us, and they do get good results. So I'm not going against, I'm not poo-pooing it, but I'm just saying that not everybody's body is the same. So if your best friend is doing it, she's doing great, and she got the full testing and her body's doing amazing and it's rocking it, fine, but that might not be yours. And don't assume that your best friend did the full urine testing and she might not even know if her body's rocking it. So just understand that, and that's same for you guys with the testosterone. But here it is. With men, I don't want you walking around with low testosterone. I see too many men with depression, and I see too many men just giving up. And, maybe this is cause of like divorces and stuff too, because people just, might not be having sex, right? They might not be happy. They might not be having any motivation. So like, we don't want to all be walking around, we're depressed because we have no hormones. So again, what you eat, your diet, your lifestyle, your liver working properly, over drinking, over smoking, having a bad lifestyle, and not being connected with your spirit and God, and also not making sure your liver isn't working great and your gut has to be working great. And this is what functional medicine can do for you. It can be life-changing to just learn these things. And I'm going to leave you with this, is that I tell this to parents because this is a really bizarre thing that just happened to me. I got interviewed on an article, which I'm actually going to talk about in my next podcast, and I'll get deeper into it. But the reason I did it was the article was ripping apart. The author worked for this magazine that just rips apart RFK Jr. And I don't want to get political about any of this, but I just couldn't understand why anybody wouldn't want the food cleaner, the vaccines cleaner and safer. Like, why would you not want someone to finally get into the United States government and just demand that these insane companies that are making billions of dollars off us feed us correctly or help make healthy products? Like, that's just like, that's just simple for me. And that's what I want, right? So it's not political to me, although we're making it political to me. It's just like, I would think that if you're, no matter what side of the stupid aisle you're on, I would just be like, everybody would come together and want safer food, cleaner air, cleaner water, all that stuff. So I had to have this interview because I wanted to understand why somebody would be against this. So in my next podcast, I'm going to talk about it. But my point of why I'm bringing up now is I was just astonished that existed, that people don't want to do it, that people don't think it's significant. They don't think that like really eating healthy and feeding your babies healthy and feeding your kids healthy, they don't think it matters. And so I understand it could be difficult in the world we lived in, and it's probably not as difficult back in the day when that's all they had. They didn't have all these food products, right? So they had to actually feed their family real food. So maybe it's a little more difficult today because we have so much food junk in front of us. I get it. But why wouldn't you want to? Why wouldn't you want to at least start your baby's life out feeding them healthy? And a lot of people are just saying it's just, they don't think, it's not that they're telling me it's too hard. They really just don't see the connection. They don't see the connection in the fact that if you ate more plants and fruit and you stayed away from food products, and I don't call them food, by the way. When you're in the food aisle, when you're in the food store and all those boxed and packaged foods in the food aisles, they're products. That's Kellogg's products. It's Nabisco's products. That's Pepsi's product. That is not food. So you want to feed yourself that, you're going to have these problems that I talk about in these podcasts. So do that for yourself. Clean up your diet, clean up your life, find your moving groove, find your spirit, get your connection back to God, and allow me to dive deeper with you and see what's causing the problem so we can bring the balance back in. All right. So I want to thank you so much for listening to this series. And of course, there's so much more to talk about with hormones. I'm just touching in the 42-minute podcast here lightly, but there's a lot more to consider. Vitamins and, do you have toxins? How do you get rid of the toxins? How do you get the gut working better? There's lots here. And how do you, if you have a thyroid problem, what do you do? I do have a podcast, and it's a series on thyroid. I have a podcast on MTHFR because that's something about detoxing your liver. So go back and listen to some of my podcasts, but definitely catch the next one. I'm going to talk about that article. It's amazing. All right. Thank you.